Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. I couldn't do it on Nelson version. I was trying to end it with that.
Can you do it one more time? I want a clean one. Can you do it again?
I think Sean should do it. I think Owen Wilson should do it.
No, I want Chris to do it. I want you to do your impression.
Because it was so good?
Yeah, totally.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. I don't know who that was.
Do you have something stuck in your mouth? Like, what happens?
It's like you're holding on to, you've got like a lollipop in your mouth at the same time.
Hey, welcome to Storied, a podcast where we take one form of media and translate it into another.
This episode, we're going to be taking the first three Die Hard movies, and we're going to be changing them and transforming them into 3 seasons of a television show. So we're going to take each movie and sort of translate it into 1 season of the Die Hard television show.
So I think first off, we should probably kind of decide that, are we gonna essentially redo the same villain, right? Like, if we're gonna do this nowadays, like, who's gonna play John McClane?
Oh man!
And who's gonna play Hans Gruber?
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
You can play Hans Gruber.
Well, it's as you were saying that, like, we could do something that's like, I haven't seen the Lethal Weapon TV show, so I'm not going to go there. But like the Fargo series basically takes the same basic premise and like ideas and tone, but they don't use the same characters and stuff, And it's
true.
I don't think we're going to sort of step that far away from the source material. I'm assuming there's still going to be like Nakatomi Tower in season 1, and like we talked about this very briefly before the podcast started, but like I assume that we'll expand upon each movie. Like, I don't think the second season would take place entirely at an airport, so we'd have to like add in a lot of content to sort of fill out each season. So it doesn't have to be exactly like minute to minute, beat to beat, like twist to twist, like all exact same, but we should probably keep the basic framework the same. Yeah, so
totally. I was just trying to think of a comp that might help us. Like, we could freight up a little bit. Sorry.
That's okay. So season 1, I think, basically starts with, like John and Holly on the skids, and you get to see how it affects their kids. Like in the first, we age their kids up a little bit. So it's like a Mad Men
on the show. The kids,
the characters, they're characters on the show. Like, we see, like, later on in the season, we see from their perspective, like watching the news and seeing what's going on at Nakatomi Plaza,
right?
And that their parents are in danger.
So the touchstone, and I said this before we started, but the touchstone for me on this one is 24, right? Or like, I feel like because this event is this one event is what the whole season is sort of predicated around, that it should, at least this season, should take place like a 24, where it's just the whole thing takes place in one 24-hour block, where like it's all sort of real time, and it doesn't take place over weeks or months, because like a terrorist holdout that lasts that long would be pretty much impossible to believe, right? So I feel like it's each episode is exactly 1 hour after the last episode, and all the events are taking place kind of in real time, right?
We could do that. I mean, like, you could have where like the audience has dramatic irony throughout the first episode, like and knows that they're watching a Die Hard show, and you could start it with like, you see like Al, and his wife, his pregnant wife, like hanging out. You know what I mean? Like, basically, we end the first episode with them everybody getting to the tower.
Okay,
right, to set the season up or something. And like, you see what Hans is doing in the meantime. You see him on a plane, flying in. You see them getting prepped.
So the whole episode is just like set up and sort of the anticipation of what's going to happen for the rest of the season. Okay, I can see that.
What else they did? Like, what else did they do to set this up for themselves? Like, did they kill anyone on the way? Did they terrorists? I mean, did they kill anyone on the way? Did they go buy a chainsaw? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's really important to figure out the origin story of that chainsaw.
I was wondering where it came from when I watched the movie.
Yeah,
it is very important to the
you
story.
guys are talking. What you guys are talking about, though, and I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying that we don't have to go that way, but I think it depends on how faithful we want to be, and like what we want to preserve, and what we want to change, what we want to do with it. Because like that's why I kind of brought up Fargo, because it kind of takes just some of the same basic elements and kind of like throws them on its head, And spoiler alert for the first season of Fargo and the movie, but like the guys, they kind of take William H. Macy's character from the movie and give it to Martin Freeman in this show, but like his wife dies in like the first episode, so it's like the same basic kind of predicament, like a guy who kind of wants his wife dead, and then you just kind of like you're kind of freed up to not completely replicate it and not completely be that faithful to it. So just throwing it out there that you could move in that direction.
I do remember. I mean, like Fargo. I think. I remember like watching the first episode is kind of interesting because you think where the whole season is going to go, and it's kind of like I'm on board for this. This is well done, and then it just completely changes that at the end of the first episode. It's like holy shit, yeah. Like,
I haven't watched it, so it doesn't stick to that at all.
No, it's not. It kind of like makes you think they're redoing the movie, kind of, and then it totally like is like, nope, that's not what's happening at all here.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about doing that at all.
It is interesting. It's way more interesting because of that, I think.
So the twist in this R1 is that they actually are freedom fighters and they aren't exceptional thieves. And there's a larger a terrorist group that they're a part of that we then explore in seasons 2 and 3, especially in 3. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, like I was just goofs aside though. Like that is the kind of thing where you'd want to expand on the world in a way that makes sense and allows for the seasons to sort of tie together. The way that like the Wire seasons are pretty much distinct, but there is like a larger thing that they tap into. Like the dock worker guys in season 2 aren't super connected to season 1, but they bring the drugs in for the Greek, and the Greek's the one who supplies the drugs to the street guys in season 1. So there is a connection. There's a sort of a description of a larger world, and we'd probably want to sort of expand the Die Hard world to allow for that kind of thing, right?
Oh man, what you could do is Hans's brother,
Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons, yeah. What is his character's name? He's
Simon.
Is that what he calls himself? That, but that's not actually his name, right?
No, that's his real name. It is.
His name's not Simon Gruber.
Yesterday.
Is it Simon?
It definitely
Gruber? Is. Okay, fine.
His name is Simon. He calls himself like Peter Krause or something, and then they find out.
Holy shit, you're right. His name is Simon Gruber. Simon Peter Gruber.
Yeah. I just watched it on Friday night.
Okay, all right, you got me.
So,
the Die Hard Wiki agrees.
But we could see their relationship and how they both became terrorists. But Hans went the way of he wanted to he stopped doing it for a cause, and then went to get money. And Simon was still hanging out doing the cause business for a while, and then he realized that this is bullshit. Somewhere in season 2, and then he does it in season 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could definitely play with that, where that's happening on the side the whole time.
Yeah, that's cool. I like the idea. Well, I mean, Simon's still kind of, and Chris, you can correct me because you saw it more recently, obviously. But Simon, I feel like even at the end when they reveal that they didn't blow the money up at all, that they have kept it just like the same sort of aha, we were actually thieves, in the first movie. He still is using it to effectively his plan is buy a country, I guess, for his him and his compatriots. It isn't entirely selfish, and the way that Hans's thievery is. I feel like he still has a camaraderie with his fellow, paramilitary guys, and they're trying to make a life for themselves somehow, even though it's the shitty terrorist version of that, right, Chris? Am I wrong in that, or?
Yeah, there's a line about it, but it's they do a fun job of they do kind of go back and forth, for a while you think it's just a revenge thing against John, and then you realize that they're actually just stealing the gold, and then you realize that they're going to sink the gold because that's what the terrorist groups wanted to do. But then he keeps it, so it's kind of they don't really he tells his group of men that that's what he's going to do, but then immediately goes and there's this weird unspoken interaction between him and the girl, and they go and have sex. He's not really trustworthy, is my point. It's not, you don't really get a clear sense of what he was trying to do or which way he was heading with it.
I do like the idea though of the younger brother who splits off like idealistically from his more like if we were to change things and like if Simon stayed somewhat attached to his cause and then Hans just kind of broke away but took all the skills that he had learned to sort of like just become a thief. I think that is an interesting dynamic to explore over the seasons for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you could build the first season to that split, and then you don't see Simon again until like season 2,
right?
Like
that feels like definitely feels like television, like current television, where they sort of introduce an interesting sort of shadowy guy, and then you sort of forget about him for a full season, and he comes back, so like roaring back on the stage in third season or fourth season.
Yeah, you start seeing, on the TV show too. You start seeing like parallels between like John and Hans. He's also got a wife, and they split up, and like they could have been buddies in another life, but they didn't talk about any of that shit.
If you weren't
later.
a murderer,
yeah.
That's interesting.
I don't know if that's good or not, but like there's just some interesting stuff you could get away with on a TV show where it's like the first 3 or 4 episodes are probably about set up for like John and Holly, her going away with the kids and how that affects him, and all the New York cops that you're going to then later see in the third season, them going out drinking and shit and right. dealing with it, and then like somebody encouraging him to go out there for Christmas because she invited him, and like the fact that they still love each other, and like the kids having a hard time with that on the West Coast. Like, all that stuff makes for some pretty interesting TV just by itself, right? Like, and meanwhile, John's, like, drunkenly busting scumbags, and, like, his commander's giving him a bunch of bullshit about, like, you got to stop beating the shit out of these guys. Your wife's not coming back.
Yeah. He's, like, taking out all his rage on his, like, perps.
Yeah, and he's, like, he's the one who says, like, you should go out there, man. Like, just get the fuck out of here because you're becoming an asshole. I mean,
I think that'd be a good scene to start the series on. Is like John just on like a regular bust, like in New York. That way, like you could have because tonally and like property wise, you'd want like a big action set piece. Like
I was going to say the same thing.
If we're stretching out the whole conflict at the tower, you need a set piece for that, and that'd be a good way to get it and kind of get some of that stuff you're just talking about out, like where John's pissed off and like not. Like his marriage life is affecting his job,
I love the idea.
And you're kind of conflicted about it.
Yeah, I love the idea of the reason he goes out to see her is it's Christmas time, but also he's effectively put on like he's on like what do they call it, like a suspension without on leave. Like his boss is like, listen, you need to take a break. We're putting you on, suspension or whatever, and you just take some time to figure your shit out, man. Like, go see your wife. Figure your shit out because you can't. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to fire you. And it's like it's partially to go see his wife, but it's partially because he has been ordered to do it. And I think that's like an interesting place to start him, where he wouldn't naturally just like gravitate back towards her and like into a place where he would apologize to her unless he was pushed there by his job, right? Because he's like beginning of the first movie, he keeps harping on like, I can't just like leave my job. I have all this work to do, and so the fact that his job is more important than her, which is obviously why he didn't follow her to California, being the thing that pushes him there.
That's set up in the first episode. Like they argue about that before she tells him she's leaving, right? Like,
right.
And then she's already made the decision, but she doesn't mention it. Maybe even into the second episode. Like you could. Like that's interesting tension, like because you're following Holly. She's a character on the show. Like, maybe the first scene in the whole series is her getting the promotion.
Yeah,
and then sitting in the car, not wanting to go in the house, and wondering if she's going to tell him. And she doesn't tell him.
It's just like the letter from Nakatomi. That's like congratulations on your promotion or your job or whatever, and she just sits there not knowing what to do with it. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're gonna tease it out, like the nice thing about that first movie is that, like, despite the fact that it's ridiculous, it's so grounded. You know what I mean? Like, everything is so grounded in like a person having to go through this ordeal. It's not like about it's about him being an ordinary guy in an extraordinary situation, and the movies increasingly forget about that. As they go along, I think. But like
they kind of brought it back in 3. Well, like in 2, it totally forgets about it, and then in 3, it's fun. Like when you meet him, like when you come, he's like hungover. He's like hungover the whole movie. And like,
Yeah.
like literally, he's complaining about it the entire movie, and he's like, Holly's not even in it, and he's like, you find him, and he's like kind of washed up. Like the second one, they totally glorify him as like this like hero cop, and then the third one, he's just been like drunk, and he's almost been fired, and like Holly left him. Basically, he hasn't talked to her for a year.
Yeah.
And in the second one, he had moved to L.A. And then in the third one, like he's back in New York, and they never explain why. Which is what with that the first one and the third one, like they don't. And I was trying to dig into like Hans's motivation too, but they don't give you any more than you need for the movie to work. But it's like just enough in like a good way, you know. It's like the movie starts and like Holly's already gone, like he's going to visit her, and they never say why he left, right? Like you just know it was because he didn't want to leave his job.
I mean, they say it pretty explicitly later in the movie, but you don't need that information to sort of piece it together.
Yeah, I mean, up front, like you just get a sense of what their relationship is like the
Right.
current state of their relationship.
Those movies, to your point, Sean, like they are so dense with character stuff that's just implied. Because you can't fit in a 2-hour movie, and there are scenes of it, like there is like the dialogue when he's in the room with her right before the heist actually begins, and there's some really good moments where like he's in the bathroom, he's pulling glass out of his feet, and he's like telling Al to apologize to her, and all like there's some really good moments of actual character stuff. I mean, there's character stuff all over the movie, but it's so densely packed with just implication that we could totally tease that out into actual moments and actual scenes with the characters during the heist, before the heist, even after the heist, really. Because them like reconciling at the end of season 1, having problems in season 2, and then eventually just like it just never works out in season 3. That feels very grounded, it feels very real, and it also sort of matches the sort of like loads, the cultural touchstones that I think of when I think of that kind of television.
Well, it's there, right? It's there in the story. I mean, the nice thing about it is pretty consistent. Like,
right.
The first movie, they're estranged, but they're not broken up. They get back together because they go through an extraordinary event and realize they love each other, and it's worth whatever to be together, right? And then the second one is basically just that again. That exact same story. I mean, like, the second movie is the whole idea behind that movie was like, okay, what if the exact same shit happens in a different way? And then
their relationship is different.
It is,
they're
but like really,
terms.
really slightly.
But what I mean is like
they're on good terms.
I know, but what I mean is like the fact that like she's in peril, and his goal is mainly driven by the fact that she's in peril. Again, you know what I mean? It's really ridiculous similar. That she's in peril.
But it's not.
And he's there at the right time.
It's got less weight.
Yeah.
It's got less weight because they're on good terms. Like, it's like you want them to reconcile, like, in the first one. Or, you know what I mean? Like, you know that it means something to him, and then he can have that line where he says, tell her I'm sorry, because he thinks he's going to die. But in the second one, like, it doesn't... she's only in peril, so it's, like, way less investing.
But she has more to do in this second one, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, she's stuck on the plane with the reporter from the first one.
Exactly.
It's so stupid.
How do we get this guy back in? It's like they had a checklist, and they were just like, all right.
Everybody loved when she punched him in the face.
Let's just put him in a room together and see what happens.
How do we do that? How do we just milk that for all it's worth?
I am definitely interested.
What does she do this time that's worse?
She kicks him in the nuts.
Yeah.
No, she literally tases him in the fucking bathroom of the plane. Yeah, she opens the door and tases him like on live TV. He's on live TV again when it happens too, which is another ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally they just took like moment from moment, shot to shot of the same fucking movie.
Well, that's the whole gag. The whole movie was like predicated on like he even says like, how does the same shit happen to the same guy twice?
Yeah. Is it also Christmas?
It's also Christmas.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it is.
Is it exactly 1 year later?
I don't remember if they say or not.
I moving this into like seasons, it's definitely interesting because we can have a lot more of growth from Holly's character in, through season 1 into season 2, right? Because in the first movie, she's actually very involved, and she's like the mouthpiece. Once the boss is killed in the computer room in his office, then like she becomes the sort of de facto head of the people that are the hostages, and she goes and like makes demands to Hans, and she's very like she's pretty empowered as far as but still a damsel, unfortunately. But in the second movie, having her be much more in control of her situation while John's doing his thing, she's doing her thing, and they work together somehow, or they kind of get in each other's way even. And just having her evolve through season 1, through the experience that she's had in season 1 into season 2, being a much more sort of proactive character, I think would be an interesting sort of arc for her. I mean, it matches the movies, but just sort of teasing that out a little bit.
Well, what I was getting at though was it's all fleshed out. We're fleshing out something that's basically already there.
Right.
You have the first movie, the second movie. They basically go through that again, and their marriage is stronger than ever. And then we get to dramatize what happened after that, to get to the point where they're divorced again, right?
Interesting.
That's kind of something that's cool to deal with.
Yeah.
On the show, that's already sort of built into the narrative.
He moves to LA, and there might be, I don't know, it's just coming to mind quickly. But he moves to LA and his job is a little more kind of cushy, and he's got after the events of the I can never remember the name. Is it Nakatomi?
Yeah,
Nakatomi. How do you say it? Nakatomi.
You just watch these movies, Chris. Come on.
I know, and I'm an idiot. But maybe he can move to LA, and then the events of the airport. Because in the second one, if we're going to follow the same exact kind of circumstances, they're in DC actually, and then they're at going to John's in-laws, Holly's mom's for Christmas.
Amazing! God,
and the kids are already there. The first scene is he gets his mother-in-law's car towed, from the airport, he left it outside.
Yeah,
that's the whole movie.
Yeah. And Dennis Franz.
And then just Dennis Franz. And at the end of the movie, it's so stupid. He's like, "I'm going to forgive that parking ticket."
Yeah.
That's just big emotion
that's
reveal.
what he gets.
He literally rips it in half. He holds it up and he's like, it's Christmas. Or something like that.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
real
crazy.
fucking generous of you.
Yeah.
I know you just got blown up in an airplane. So, but anyway.
I got you. Don't worry.
Thanks, Pud.
If we follow those kind of circumstances again, if it is some time between the seasons, the event of the airport could make John realize that he wanted to go, he misses the action that he had in New York or whatever. You know what I mean? So you could kind of
thinking earlier that
trace the push and pull.
You could. I think there's a thread in this whole thing where after the events of the first season, because they kind of allude to it, people know it was him because he was the famous guy. A little bit of celebrity that he had. It could be interesting to sort of tease that out as a thread. It's where it gets to him and he doesn't like it. Because he wouldn't like it. That character would hate that. And that also is exacerbated by the fact that he's in L.A. You know what I mean? It's made worse by, oh, shit, everybody, David Letterman's calling, or whoever, if it's Jimmy Kimmel these days, whatever it would be. But, there's, second season literally opens with, him on one of those shows talking about it and just being extremely uncomfortable. And it's, super fucking awkward and weird. And, he hates that, And, he wants to get away from it, so there's a reason for them to sort of have a little bit of tension already, and that can get forgotten once the plane stuff happens. But
yeah, I was actually going to ask if it's more interesting to have their marriage be stronger, or if it's they survived a harrowing event together and they realize that they love each other, but season 2 is much more they're working on it, they're in therapy together, it's still kind of they love each other and they're really trying to make it work. But it's not just an instant turnaround, right? There's a lot of work to be done, and maybe we can see over the course of the season, they're actually, succeeding in it or failing, whatever, makes more sense in the moment over the season. But I feel that might be more real to those characters. They at the end of season 1, they say, okay, yes, we shouldn't split apart. That's stupid. Let's try. Let's at least put the work in and try and make this work. And it isn't just an overnight, our marriage is so much stronger because of one singular night or one singular event. This is much more of a long thing that we're working on. And once the endorphins wear off, they realize that it's still a shitload of work to do. And having them I see like interesting conversations with them like over the phone to each other where they're like parroting what the therapist told them to do, like over the phone while they're talking about like this fucking, like she's stuck on the plane and she gets to call him or something, or before the event happens, and they're sort of talking about like, well, our therapist said we need to do these things, and the therapist always says you do this thing, and they kind of get into a weird fight while this other stuff's going on. I don't know. I feel like that feels more true to those characters.
I think it's like we would be missing a trick if you're gonna have a TV show and you're gonna fill that time. Like you really do want to, I think, expand on that and make it more subtle and more nuanced than it would otherwise be in like a film. Right. And like one of the things I was just thinking is like you were making me think that I don't know if you've watched *Halt and Catch Fire*. No, almost nobody has, but it's really, really great. And I don't want to spoil anything, but the series finale of the show. The episode that happened prior to that, I thought when I was watching it, I was like, what are they going to talk about in the next episode? Like, I have no idea. Like, it felt like it was over, but that last episode was basically just sort of an episode that was following like the major events of the series and the season thus far, and it kind of wrapped everything up in a. It was more of a sort of the characters kind of going through what just happened and talking about it and dealing with it, and then looking to the future and other things that were going on, and it made for a really riveting sort of hour of just character TV.
Yeah,
like, and in a way that I wasn't expecting. And you could do something like that. Like this is a major thing that just happened, especially if it just happened to them again.
Right.
Like it'd be interesting to see them sort of unpack that and what it means to their relationship and what it means to them, and I don't know. And John racked with guilt for having killed 45 people in the second movie.
Wait, so how does he remind me? Because I don't remember the second movie as well. He shoots a bazooka and blows up the plane or some shit. Like I feel like that's a scene, or did I invent that?
No,
in my head?
he gets on the plane.
He doesn't.
Go ahead, Chris.
It's even worse than that.
Yeah,
or not worse, but like he gets on the wing of the plane and they come out and he like shoves his jacket in like some flap on the wing so that the plane can't take off, and then they realize he's out there and they go out and they fight him. Like for some reason too, the main bad guy has a machine gun aimed at him the entire time, while another guy fights him. They never shoot him.
Yeah, he doesn't shoot him. It's not like he's in the way.
He takes, and then, well, not only that, but he takes out the guy who's fighting him, like the first guy, and then the guy throws down the machine gun and walks out into the plane and fights him. He never once, he might shoot at him for like a second, but like he's like, it's really bizarre. But then he fights that guy, and that guy kicks his ass because he's like a paramilitary guy. And John like is hanging onto the edge, and he sees the flap that says "dump fuel," and he like grabs it as he's falling off the edge. And it like flows behind them, and then he takes out and it like sprays gas like a trail of gasoline. And then John takes out his cigarette lighter and lights that gasoline on fire, and it follows the plane into the air and explodes the plane.
Holy shit!
And that's how he takes it out.
So it is absolutely ridiculous.
Are there people? Are there like innocent people? The innocent people can't still be on the plane, right? Like the innocent people have been like evacuated.
No, this is like the terrorists finally got their private jet. Like it's only terrorists on the plane.
That's amazing.
So we have to keep that.
Yeah.
I definitely get the feeling that John McClane would be the kind of man who would feel super shitty every time he kills somebody, right? Like, at least in the first movie, he like every single time he actually shoots and kills someone, he gives them a shitload of chances to like give up first. Like he never goes into a room and just sprays it with bullets. You know what I mean? Like it's usually self-defense or. Some of the deaths are like accidents, like the dude who like just breaks his neck rolling down the staircase.
That's the first guy.
Yeah, kills. Yeah. Like I have a machine gun now, ho 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 guy. Like he very very rarely just goes. He does not like. That's why I like that John McClane as a character. Like even though he goes as like the Roy Rogers cowboy persona, he's really not that. He's not like meathead action hero guy. Like you said earlier, Sean, like he is very much just like an ordinary guy in an extraordinary circumstance, which is what I guess the whole movie, the first movie, is about. But he doesn't even fulfill the movie role of like big buff, like Stallone-esque action figure. And
he fucks up a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And he gives people chances, and he's like really smart too. But all the shitty things that happen in the first movie are because nobody listens to him, right? Like the FBI guys, like, they tell him that he calls the cops, he calls the fire department, nobody takes him seriously. And so, like, if they just listened to him, things would have gone way smoother. So he's not, like, big buff dude who can just a meat shield who can just be shot a bunch of times. Like, he runs across glass and almost bleeds to death. You know what I mean? Like, he's not the stereotypical action hero. And I find that really cool and endearing about that character, which is stuff they kind of lose over the course of the next few movies because they just kind of don't put that much time into looking into that. But the idea that he would just be fucked up after killing all these people, I totally believe that. Like, totally buy that he would have these horrible like dreams and nightmares and flashbacks about like just blowing up a bunch of people. Even in the moment, it's fucking ridiculous. But like, it's a really I feel like for that character, it would be a real traumatic experience.
It's funny. There's definitely something to the idea that like he's seeing shit. He thinks he's seeing shit at the airport when it first starts happening because he's like, this shit can't be happening again. Like where he's got a little bit of like post traumatic stress. You know what I mean? Like where he actually doesn't think he's like he doesn't think it's real at first. Because like in the movie as it is in Die Hard 2, he essentially as he gets to the airport he sees everything that's going on and like immediately investigates it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where
like everything's suspicious to him.
Yeah. It could be cool to have him get over that hump.
And they do it in the dumb way, like what you're talking about, where it'd be fun if he's kind of thinks he's being paranoid, but he is actually seeing stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and it takes a long time for him to get over his own reservations of like, nah, I'm just fucked up from
God. He's like, I got my last day of therapy today. Oh, I'm finally cured, and then he goes to the airport.
Well, no, but that's basically what they do in the second one. Is like he's right and he knows he's right from the beginning, and then they have the dumb cops being like, you fucking. Not everything's Nakatomi Plaza, McLean. Like they say, like every 3 seconds. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's really good.
It'd be much better if he was like, if he was his own antagonism. Like he was like this. Like he did see something, but he's like, he almost doesn't want to admit it. You know what I mean? Or he thinks he's just being paranoid, or he's scaring himself by even considering it.
It's instead of like instead of how could the same shit happen to the same guy twice? It's like how could the same shit happen to the same guy twice? You know, like it's not.
Yeah, it's just
a totally different feeling.
It's totally like unbelievable. Yeah, like the idea that he would, you know, in the space between the seasons have to wrestle his own paranoia, and maybe that's something that like strains his marriage with Holly. It's just like he's like hyper protective of her, and like won't let her go out of the house without like telling him exactly where she's going and stuff, and it's becoming kind of smothering for her, and he just cannot get over. Like he's just trying to be hyper aware of everything around him. Like he's just checking everybody out, checking all the corners. Like anytime he sees something suspicious, he like checks it out and ends up being nothing, right? And then Holly's like, you know, John, you have to fucking get over this. You have to let it go. And then he goes to the airport, and that exact shit happens again.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's almost a better joke than the joke that they went with, which is it's very flippant, you know.
Right.
And he might as well, in the one in the movie, he might as well look at the camera.
Yeah, literally. I mean, it's such a winking movie.
It's super winky, yeah.
Yeah. Man. Okay. Oh, you know what the best thing, Harrison, if you don't remember Die Hard 2, I'm just going to tack this on, because the best thing is that the fire that like blows the plane up, the trail of fire, then becomes the landing lights that the planes can use to land.
Oh my god!
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Fuck, no, it does not. That's bullshit. That's
real. It definitely does.
Oh my god! All I remember about that movie is like the paramilitary dude in a dimly lit room, a smoky room, like doing like naked squats and shit. Like that's the
first 5 minutes of the movie.
Scene. Yeah, that's like the one like image that's been seared into my brain about that movie is that horrifying, unnecessary, sweaty like push-ups and pull-ups naked guy.
Well, you know, the disappointing thing to me is that like when he comes out on the plane to fight McClane later in the movie, he doesn't get naked first.
That's how he fights.
Yeah,
it's like a psychological thing.
I am the best warrior. I must fight naked to prove myself.
Yeah, I don't know how they would have gotten that past the censors, but
also he is a character in the season 2 that I would fucking love to get to know a little better.
Yeah,
like it's just like the season 2. Well, no, here's the thing.
Why does he get naked?
More naked scenes.
Also,
Totally.
yeah. Look, so seriously though, season 2 starting with like him, like the first time you see him in season 2, like doing naked Tai Chi or whatever, and then like his like girlfriend coming in and going, "What again?" You know what I mean? Like,
get out of here, Stacy.
Like he's like, "Fuck you, bitch," and then he goes to meet the guy that they're gonna later like fake or like the fake task squad that gets brought in to take him down. Like they meet at a bar and they just talk about how much his girlfriend sucks because she's not into naked Tai Chi.
I've been trying to get in her naked Tai Chi for like 6 months, man. I don't know if it's going to work out.
He's like, just dump her, man.
She comes in, she's like, we at least close the blinds. Come on.
God, the room just looks out into the living room. Like this is like a weird window that like there's a space between the two, and she's like, God, like I have company over, man. Like, can you just not like for just one day, just not do that? I like the idea of them having like real conversations. Like, oh, he's a terrorist, but he's like I can empathize with him because he's got relationship troubles. Like it's very good.
Oh man, Die Hard 2, Die Harder.
We haven't really talked too much about season 1. We covered season 2, I think, but we need to talk about season 3 and how we go from season 2 to season 3.
Yeah, well,
season 3 is like the movie is kind of best. That movie is kind of best suited for week to week, I think.
Yeah,
like that kind of thing where they're driving around New York. You know, that's
yeah, it definitely has
a
like a true crime. Like we got to figure out who this guy is, who's like doing all this weird like puzzles, leaving like clues and riddles and shut around the city and like causing mayhem. And his plan, him enacting his plan, actually takes a pretty long time. Like once all the pieces lock together and he actually like hits the go button on his plan, it's been very clearly set. Like he plants the like fake bomb in the school. Like there's a whole bunch of setup that we just don't see that we could see happening over like weeks between season 2 and season 3.
And I think like a question that arises from that is like, when are we setting this? Because if it's now, like that, any of the stuff that he did in season 3 would be way harder to do these days because of technology and stuff. So I don't know if that's something worth digging into.
No, it just means we have to come up with solutions to those problems. I mean, I think it's all solvable, right?
Yeah,
like every other TV show that's contemporary can do it.
Well, that's the interesting thing about it. Like if it's contemporary, yeah, it's contemporary, right? Like, and I think if we did that, then it becomes more interesting to try and like dramatize how it happens.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
yeah.
Because it would be more difficult, and there would be a lot more going on that we could dramatize. And I think like it also allows for the like having a television time frame. Like part of the appeal of the third movie is like he's got it's just basically a long sprint. Like everything once it starts rolling, it just goes. You know,
right.
But it's also, it'd be interesting to do something different with the third season to make that more of a slow burn so that it builds over the course of the season rather than it being like, just go, 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 everything's happening now. And like how, like the effect that takes on them, like dealing with it over a long period of time, It's almost more like Zodiac than the movie.
Yeah, kind of like, I'm trying to think. I mean, this isn't the exact thing, but like season 4 of Breaking Bad, where it was like this like chess game between Walt and Gus. You know what I mean? Like it kind of had this like it was still tense as hell, but it had this like drawn out sort of like Cold War pacing to it. If that makes sense. Like it had the big scenes, but it was more about building suspense and when stuff was going to happen, and kind of like
exactly.
Is that kind of more in line with what you're talking about?
Yeah, like more setups that don't pay off for a while. You get like something set up in season or episode 2 or 3 that you don't see until episode 8. And
then you might even be able to do something with it, like the way they did with Fargo. Like you think it's the bomb in the school. Like we've seen the movies. You think it's the bomb in the school, but it's actually something to do with getting into Fort Knox or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like we play with your expectations as an informed viewer of a past version of this thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's what I was trying to get at with the dramatic irony thing. It's like I feel like you could play with that a little bit on the show, and it would be okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like setting up an expectation and then swerving because the people expect it because they've seen the movie kind of thing?
Yeah, and then Fargo does that too. Like we were talking about Fargo earlier, but like that show does do that. where, you know, you see sort of something that's like an echo of something you've seen in a Coen movie, and they don't just reference Fargo on the show either. They reference other Coen movies as well.
Oh, interesting.
And it's kind of interesting because, you know, it's something you've seen before, but it's different, so it feels different. Like, there's even, like, the bowling alley shit from The Big Lebowski is in Fargo season 3.
Oh, wow.
Kind of. You know, it's totally
like
different.
Talking to the cowboy-ish.
Yeah. But it's there. I mean, and it's like, you know, they just kind of grab whatever they find is interesting for what the story they're trying to tell, and they put it in there. And I think that, you know, we could do similar things. Like, you could do a scene where, you know, the subway bomb, right, that goes off, like, right when they get there, because they weren't supposed to make it. Like, that one could be one that just was just a joke, you know, and they get all the way across the city, and, like, it doesn't go off. But he just made him run across the city. And, like, that's a small thing, but it would be, you know, people would expect it to go off. But then it would have to lead somewhere else, you know.
You could do something. You could play with it in a fun way, too, where you see the terrorists go to the school the first time, and you think it's because they're scoping it out for the bombs or something, and then, like, they, like, walk up to a classroom door and, like, wave into the window, and you see that, like, their kid is in there. You know what I mean? Like, that's a bad version
Little
of it.
Gruber Jr.
Probably, but, like,
is in, like, a New York district school.
he named his son Hans.
No, he named his son John. Come on. After the man who killed his brother.
It'll be so good.
You're right. That does make more sense.
One of the things I love most about the third movie is that that bomb is fake. You know,
the syrup bomb.
Yeah. It's like we'll do some crazy shit. We'll blow some shit up, but we're not going to kill kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or take a chance that we're going to kill kids, and that's awesome. Like, that's really like a nice, weird little, like, because that scene is so tense up until it starts spraying syrup.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
which is such a perfect way to diffuse the tension of that scene too.
Yeah, it's good. It's legitimately good filmmaking.
It's also nice to see that Simon Gruber has a floor. Like, he's only willing to do so many things to get what he wants. You know, like, the whole thing ended up it is part of his plan anyway, because it was supposed to jam up it was supposed to put a bunch of decoy school buses out there and, like, jam up the phone lines and all that stuff. Like, there's a reason to it for like the freak out, like the public. Like, he announces it over the radio, I think. So it's like a public thing, and he, like, there's like everything up till that point, I think, had just been him calling into the cops and, like, getting the cops to run around and get McClane to do all this bullshit. And then eventually he calls into a radio station and makes it a live announcement. So there's definitely like an escalation of stakes at that point, which I think is interesting for, you know, the midpoint in the season or wherever. But
you also you get to hear Jeremy Irons do a pretty awful Southern accent for a second there.
Oh God, that's right. I forgot about that.
He's like, "There's a bomb in a school." It's like not good at all.
Yeah.
So Die Hard with a Vengeance 3. Die more often.
Die Harderer. Die Hardest. Why didn't they call it Die Hardest, idiots?
Well, because they couldn't. Because Die Hard. So I think what happened was John McTiernan came back on board. So John McTiernan directed the first episode, the first movie.
God.
And then Rennie Harlan, who also directed Cutthroat Island, directed the second one.
Yeah.
And then the third one was also directed by John McTiernan, who also made, like, Predator and The Hunt for Red October. And, you know, he's got a pretty good track record. Before he went to jail, he made a lot of amazing movies.
Predator.
So essentially, I think what happened was he left because he didn't want to do Die Hard 2. I think he actually did The Hunt for Red October instead. And then he came back for the third one and went, "What the fuck did you do?"
Let me fix all this shit.
So the name when he came on board was probably like Die Hard 3, Die Hardest.
Right.
And he was like, "We're not doing that. It sounds ridiculous." And they're like, "Well, what's your idea?" And then he said Die Hard with a Vengeance because he was mad about the previous movie.
So he gave it a bad name on purpose? Is what you're telling me?
He was vengeful. No, I'm saying he was vengeful.
Oh, he came back with a vengeance.
Yeah, I think he was vengeful, so it was a vengeance on the second movie.
Oh, I see.
That's my theory, anyway.
Are you making the story
Yeah,
up?
I am. Totally making it. It's a theory. I can't say that happened for real.
I think for the season, like let's say this is the final season, right? Let's forget that there's a fourth and fifth movie of Die Hard, and this is the final season. How do you feel like we sort of wrap the story of John McClane and Holly and the Gruber crime syndicate? I guess I don't know. Like, is there like a larger sort of season spanning enemy, like antagonistic force, or is each one sort of discrete? You know, how do they all sort of tie together?
I don't know. I think you set up something like Simon was trying to accomplish. You know, there's like a flashback, or like we set it up in the first season that Simon and Hans were trying to do together, and that they never got to do. And Simon's trying to do that all throughout the third season, and then he dies. Before he accomplished it, and it's sort of bittersweet and sad, or something crazy like that.
It's like open a school for deaf kids or something, like.
Yeah. He was trying to open a school for deaf kids with the money that we find out later. No, I'm just saying, like they had an ideal that that they were trying to uphold, and like he tries to go back there at the last minute, like after becoming a thief, and I don't know, it's stupid. Never mind, I'm stupid.
You might even, taking off the third movie, like, I think Harrison brought it up before, is they were trying to buy a country. So, like, you could do something stupid where, like, he actually was trying to, like, steal all the money to, like, free his people or whatever, or buy them a country or buy them an island or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like...
I love that that's a thing that he thinks he can do.
And then when he fails, like, his brother steps in and picks it up.
Like, I love that it's just like...
Which brother? Wait a minute, though. Wait. Is there a third brother you're talking about, Chris?
What? I'd say maybe you could give it to Hans, or discover that was why Hans wanted the money in the first place. Like when Simon comes in, like
he shifted over to from
yeah,
Simon
like that
to
was
Hans.
It was Hans's dream, and then when Hans dies, when he falls out of the wind, falls up down the skyscraper, Simon picks up the dream and runs with it 2 seasons later.
I kind of like the idea that Simon, the older brother, were like, when they're younger, sort of like is the idealistic one, and Hans wants to be like his older brother, and he sort of like picks up this thing that Simon's into, and then over time Hans just sort of falls away from that. Like, I like Hans as a character who likes fine things. Like, he's always like bragging about his like custom made like suits from London, and like he sort of just abandons the ideals that his brother upheld. And you know, there's a connection there between those two brothers, and they love each other, but he sort of just walked away from the thing that Simon believes in. Like, I think that's an interesting thing to explore over the course of the 3 seasons, what their relationship is and was like before Hans, you know, gets killed. Because I don't know, like it feels like it feels like things get bigger, like the story and the relationship, but it gets bigger if we say Hans had the small time vision that was very selfish, and Simon has a much larger, all-encompassing vision that takes multiple people into account and wants to, you know, is still a thief, but he's doing it for a group of people, and it feels like a good progression of characters, you know, over the 3 seasons.
What I'm saying is that, like, Simon, that was originally Hans's ideal, right? That Simon picks up from him once, like, but Hans corrupted himself and just became a thief.
Right.
That was originally why he became a thief. He corrupted himself by getting money.
Yeah.
Which is why he's always talking about all that shit, all his expensive suits and his education and all. And then, once he died, like Simon, once things start going south, he sort of remembers that, or whatever, about Hans, and wants to do that again, but it's too late for him to go back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or something. I don't know. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to function. So that might suck, but I do kind of like the idea that, like, you know, it starts with like it's the first time you ever see them, they're talking about this shit.
Yeah.
You know, and then the last time, like when he dies trying to accomplish that, but he can't.
Right. It's too late.
Do it now.
Yeah.
It's too late.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's kind of tragic for both of them.
Is there a way we can loop in season 2 a little bit more to that thread? Because I think that's a much more interesting thread than just like random paramilitary guy. Like, is the paramilitary guy one of Hans's dudes? Because Hans has his own weird paramilitary faction. Do you know what I mean? Like, well,
they should be talking to like the dictator dude. Like, the dictator dude should be Simon, and the dictator dude should be buddy.
Can you remind me about the dictator dude, because I don't remember that character.
He's like a drug lord that the Americans have extradited, and that's the whole plot of the movie. Is that he's on a plane, and the these U.S. Soldiers got paid to basically get him, like spring him, and he's coming into Dulles Airport to face extradition, I guess. And so he's like a drug lord.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they say they're going to fly him somewhere where he can't be extradited, and that's like the stakes of the movie. Like they're gonna plan to fly him somewhere else where he can't be extradited.
They never describe where that place is because I guess
it's just Pablo Escobar, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, his name's. They don't even change his name that much. It's Esperanza.
It's Pablo Esperanza.
I don't know if they ever say his first name, but it's just Esperanza. It's pretty close.
But yeah, that does make
He
sense.
even looks like him.
So you were saying that they would the drug lord and Simon and the Grubers would be in communication.
Yeah, because I think the second season has a whole section of it where you see the drug lord being an asshole and like getting caught while other shit's going on. While John is like in LA with Holly and they're trying to figure out like the what happened in Nakatomi at the end of the first season. You know, like they're dealing with that. Like while they're dealing with that, you're also cutting to Colombia or whatever other country you want to say, make up a country. Wherever this guy is supposed to be from. I think they did make up a country for him to be from in the movie. I might be wrong about that. But like you cut to him, you know, doing bad shit and getting caught by the DEA and getting extradited. And like during that section, you sort of see him dealing with Simon in some capacity.
Interesting.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I just, making sure that it feels like it's all one cohesive story because I just never felt like the second movie ever even bothered to. It doesn't really reference the first movie, in any interesting way or expand upon that movie or those characters. It's almost like, honestly, it is its own separate. It is like its own, not a Die Hard movie. It's just a completely separate movie that they then slapped a Die Hard sort of varnish over.
Well, it's one thing that's kind of I don't know if we should have a whole conversation about it, but we're digging in a lot of good character-ish stuff and kind of giving that at least some reverence. That would carry a season, but at the same time, like when I think of Die Hard, and I think a lot of people think of Die Hard, they think of explosions and shit. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you might be able. I'm just trying to really get a sense of like what the tone would be because we're talking about all the character stuff and not quite as much of the bombastic. So like IP.
Yeah, the Die Hard shit.
Worthy. Yeah, the Die Hard shit. So like. Carrying that through, like, and how we approach the rest of the adaptation, I'm just curious, like, what you guys think. Do you still think it's a big Die Hardy kind of thing? Do you still think it's a lot of explosions? Do you still think there's action set pieces in every episode?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm taking that as that is definitely like, yeah, that's part of this. Like, we're talking about what fills that out. I think, like, the spaces between those things. But I think they're big action set pieces, and I do think that like. There's tension and everything that those movies have. This should have. There's wisecracks and just but it's there's also more to it. And like we talk about this, I think we're talking about this. It is getting a little dry, but I just like this is all underpinnings of what the what's going on with the characters. We don't have to play it so straight. You know what I mean? Like it would still be written. To be funny, like I'm imagining, like when I was pitching earlier that like John McClane's sitting on like Jimmy Kimmel Live or whatever, and it's incredibly awkward. Like that's funny,
right?
It's funny because it's awkward, and he's miserable about it, but he also is wisecracking about it later, and like people like his buddies at the precinct are giving him shit over it, and like it's funny. This is our busting his balls.
Yeah, no,
right.
I think so that's definitely where we go.
I think Harrison. I'm just looking for pace and stuff too, because some of the stuff we're talking about is like stretching stuff out a little bit. And I guess Harrison did say at the beginning it would be a more 24 like show, and
well,
I feel like that's the only way you could reconcile
that's
the two.
how I'd imagine the first
like
season. But there's tons of really good shows out there that have moments of action, and any action oriented television show has moments of like down moments with characters establishing like emotional stakes and motivations and like. Even 24 is like brainless as some of the episodes of that show where like there's a lot of moments of like characters, establishing why they care or why, who what their morals are and that sort of thing. So, I can't imagine we wouldn't have that stuff.
I just was thinking in terms of like timeline and stuff because like remember he is a cop, like so he's not apt to get involved as he does, like just based on his basic everyday. Unless we change that, do you know what I mean? So I'm just trying to think of like what the seasons look like you know, and the way that they get away with it in the movies is it all takes place over like a 24-hour or less period.
Like one night,
you know what I mean? So like that's what, I'm just trying to get a sense of like what some of the stuff we're talking about, like if it is this spaced out, you know, why is he involved? How does he get involved? Or are we spacing it out? You know, that's just kind of what I'm trying to get a sense for.
I don't think we're spacing it out so much as like putting in the the runtime is filled up with more than just John McClane's perspective.
Yes.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And
And
so
they do
like
that in
we're
the
also
movies too.
Yeah.
right, but I mean like that's all plot most of the time. Like there's very little character stuff in that. You know? Like you get a little bit of like when Carl or whatever wants to kill McClane, go after McClane and rip the building apart because he killed his brother. Like, you kind of get a little bit of, like, he's sad, his brother is dead, and he wants to kill him, but, you know, it's still a plot thing that Hans is saying. Like, there's not much there. There's not much on that. Like, Hans is a little more fleshed out than the rest of those guys. The rest of those guys are kind of character types.
Right, yeah.
And so, like, I'm just talking about, like, I think we all are just fleshing it out in a way that you just get more meat to the action set pieces.
And I think that also,
Right.
you can have moments between Carl and his brother executing plot stuff and see their relationship unfold. Like, we don't have to have moments where they're sitting down and, like, fucking sharing tea and talking about their feelings. We can just have them working well together. Like, they're just a fucking cool team. Like, whatever. Like, we can figure out ways to... And even, like, when he goes to, like, cut the power lines and, like, his brother's trying to, like, attach all the wires really quickly before he cuts them, and like they're kind of antagonistic towards each other a little bit, and like putting more of that stuff in the movie, and just in executing the plot, the details of each scene, we pop out a little bit more of their personality because there's just more time for execution of those things, you know.
Yeah, and the movies have to move at a breakneck pace because they have to get so much in, and they do a good job, I think. Well, you know, for the most part, they do a good job of, you know, those characterizations feeling like people.
Yeah.
But, you know, just fleshing that out more.
Like the one gunman who steals a bunch of candy. It's just such a I always found that really weird because it's like this really tense moment when the cops are going to bust the door in, and the one guy who always plays the same like shitty strongman. I can't remember the actor's name, but he's like sitting there with this like AK assault rifle ready to kill a bunch of cops, and then he looks down and sees like a candy shelf and like steals a bunch of candy, and it's just a weird, goofy moment. I think it works fine. It's just an odd thing tonally to stick in the moment where like the cops are going to burst the door down, and it always stuck out to me as really good.
Which one is that in?
In the first movie, when the cops are like getting ready and the FBI is getting ready to like breach and clear. And Hans is like, all right, guys, here they come. And all the bad guys are getting ready because they know it's coming because they're listening in on the radios. This one dude, this like Asian actor, and he's got like long hair, and he always in all those 80s movies, he's like the same guy. And he's like getting ready. He's like hunkered down with his gun. He's like aiming at the door, the glass doors, and he's like. He sees his eyes like glance down, and like he grabs like a crunchy bar, like a Butterfinger or something, and just like steals it. It's such a weird moment, but like it's I don't know, like it's totally weird, but it's also just a little character moment, you know, like a little weird beat. And I like that kind of stuff.
Well, it's also like they do little stuff like that, like the one guy who like the safe guy, like the black guy, he's like listening to music a lot, and it's like yeah, I can remember his name, but they like they do stuff like that like kind of helps it make you realize like how. They don't even have to say how kind of prepared these guys are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're not even bothered. Like this guy's eating a piece of candy.
Yeah.
And it seems goofy, but it also like helps to like push that kind of thing forward. These guys like they're
it's casual
prepared
because they're not worried.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
That movie's good. And our 3-season show will be good. It's weird that we're only going to get 3 seasons, but hey, economics of television have changed.
That's more than enough, I think.
Well, some shows go for like 8 seasons, and you're like, what the fuck are you even trying to say anymore?
3 and done. So and I haven't seen the last. Have you seen 4 and 5? Either of you?
I have. I've seen them both. Yeah.
Fuck no.
Does Holly ever show back up?
No, she never shows up after the second movie.
His kid shows up though, right? Or some stupid shit.
Yeah, it's like the daughter is like super like.
They get into a fucking adventure together. Fuck you.
Yeah, it's in the fourth movie. He's like calling her on the phone, and she's like super troubled and like getting into all sorts of nonsense, and she's getting arrested. And he has to like pull some strings to get her out of jail or whatever. I don't think she's ever on screen. And then the fifth movie, it's like father-daughter like action movie team up. It's so ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask at the end of ours, do Holly and John end up together? I would doubt it, but I'm just curious.
I can't imagine how they would.
You know, the end of the third movie is perfect. I don't know why they fucking continued. He just calls her.
Yeah.
And who knows what she says, but that's nice.
Yep.
It's a nice ending.
Yep, I agree. It's just, it leaves space for the viewer to like just let it be whatever they want it to be.
Yeah, it's like it feels good without being ridiculous.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, she could just never pick up the phone. She could fucking hang it up on him the second that he, like they could talk for an hour and she could decide that he's still an asshole. But, it doesn't, you don't need to see any of that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how we'll end our third season, on the phone. And to payphone still, too. He, like, finds the one payphone that still works. Except it's not a quarter. He puts, like, $1.50 and change into it.
Cell phone breaks in the action.
No, it's a hipster thing. It's a hipster thing. It's like you pay with Apple Pay now or whatever.
Fuck.
It's the only way to pay, or you use your thumbprint.
Or he his phone breaks, so he has to like borrow someone else's phone. He's like walking around like in his like towel from like being in the water, like asking everyone to borrow their phone so he can call Holly. And then he's like, "Fuck, I don't remember her number because it's just in my phone book."
All right, guys. That's our Die Hard episode, a Die Hard TV show, and it was successful in that it did not have Die Hard with a Vengeance. I mean, Die Hard 4 and Die Hard 5, which I didn't even remember the fucking titles. That's why I said Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Is that not? Oh, that's 3, right?
That's 3, yeah.
Yeah.
It's Live Free or Die Hard, or Die Hard or Die Tryin.
Die Hard or Die Tryin, yeah.
Die Hard or Die Tryin was your...
That's a fucking joke I already made.
Yeah, you made that joke.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Come back next week for more of that.
All right, yeah. Thanks for joining us, guys.
All right, that's this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at storiedcast and send any feedback to storiedcast@gmail.com. See ya.
Storied is Harrison Pink, Sean Ainsworth, and Chris Rebbert, with music, as always, by Jared Emerson Johnson. Thanks for listening.
Send them to gofuckyourself@yourmothershouse.com.
Okay, wow. This took a really aggressive
Don't
turn.
give out my email address on the fucking air, okay?
That's a hard one to get. I can't believe you snagged that yourmomshouse.com email address so quickly.
Well, when you found yourmomshouse.com
That's true.
in middle school...
It feels like it's like an overstock.com kind of website where you sell off all the stuff that's in your like closet from when you're 8 years old,
It's all
like an
MILF
eBay.
porn.
Oh, okay. Well, that's weird. That's a weird thing to have in your house, but in your mom's house, especially.
It's just a place you go to the website and then somebody's like, "Do you want something to drink?" Like,
Come in. You look famished. Do you have any laundry?
Why are you here so late? I mean, it's fine. I'm glad you're here, but why are you here so
I
late?
disagree with your life choices.
But I still love you. I still love you. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah. I wish you would just call me more often.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that was too real.
How hard is it just to have this tab open on your browser?
Yeah. You haven't visited me.
Just even if it's in the background, that's fine. Yeah.
God.
You haven't visited me in like 4 months, the browser says when you log in.
Oh, man. That's rough. That's really real. It's too real. I don't want to visit this website anymore. More. More.